Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Synced Movies and Television with Matty and Stephen. Both Matty and I were on vacations and kind of spaced out our releases there a little bit. I think we missed a week. No biggie. Thank you all for watching the Orphan First Kill episode. We got some decent views off of that one. Real organic-like. Didn't have to pander or anything. Y'all know where the real is coming from, folks. Tonight we got a good one for you. We watched Barbarian. Currently, I believe, the #1 film at the box office. Right, currently. If the ads on TV are telling me
the
truths. And this movie is directed by Zach Kreger, also written by Zach Kreger, starring Georgina Campbell, Bill Skarsgard, and Justin Long, as well as Matthew Patrick Davis and Richard Brake and Kurt Braunholer, as well as James Butler, Sophie Sorensen, Rachel Fowler, J.R. Esposito, Kate Nichols, Kate Bosworth. Oh, really? Anyway, bunch of people in this movie, it seems like. Didn't seem like that many to me when I watched it. The premise being a woman staying at an Airbnb discovers that the house she has rented is not what it seems. So that's a little log line they hit you with right at the beginning. So I guess I'll just go ahead and get started here. I will have to say, just knee-jerk reactions, general thoughts here on Barbarian, that I enjoyed what I saw. I thought it was well executed, well filmed, and well acted as well. I think overall for me, there's a little something missing. It was really fun, but by the end of it, you're like, okay, I guess. You know, you kind of take it for what it was able to give you. Although I think it introduced a lot of really solid ideas, some really solid scares, and some really compelling characters. I think near the end there somewhere kind of faltered for me a little bit, and I was just kind of like, I liked it, but I could have loved it. I don't know how, but I have some ideas. How about yourself, Maddie? How do you feel? General thoughts, Barbarian.
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was good. I do think the worst part is maybe some pacing stuff and like going back in time bits. I feel like some of this they like showed people so they would understand, but I feel like you could have easily like had a conversation with the character, um, and we would have known. We wouldn't have had to have done that flashback. I
Yeah.
feel like it's like kind of a take. Like I know this guy that directed it. A friend just told me that he's part of the Whitest Kids You Know, which I've not
Okay.
seen.
Okay.
He's one of the guys
Krieger?
from that. Yeah. Um,
Okay. Interesting.
I've never seen it. Apparently, it's great. Don't know, but I feel like it was like kind of a take on like Detroit, Michigan, and like they wanted to show like what the some of these suburbs might have looked like back in the day. To like, because I mean they shot It Follows there too, but I think this movie was kind of showing like the grade of like an American city,
Right. Yeah.
and thought that was cool. I just don't know if I needed it because there was some of that. Just like kind of editing, I thought was kind of choppy, didn't flow as well as I wanted it to.
hmm
But I do think it was a strong start. I just
Yeah.
was on the edge of my seat from the beginning, and even with some of the editing stuff, I wasn't a super fan of. I still wanted to know how this story ended.
Sure.
I wanted to know what happened to these characters. Georgie, whatever the main actress's name is, Georgina.
Georgina Campbell, I believe
I
it
thought she was
was.
amazing,
Yep.
solid performance
Yeah.
throughout. Bill Skarsgård is great. I love that.
Yeah.
You know, little misdirection just because I just see him as Pennywise now, so I
Yeah.
just assume he's going to be a bad man. And
Yeah.
I love me
True.
some Justin Long, so it was a fun flick. I'm glad I saw it. Saw it with some good friends, and
All
we both
right. That
enjoyed, and we all
helps.
enjoyed it.
I think, yeah, overall, it was like a really solid movie. It's interesting to note that one of the dudes from Whitest Kids You Know, was at the helm here. It seems like there's a thin line between comedy and horror somewhere
Hmm.
that is not, I won't say easy to transcend, but logical, maybe
Yeah.
natural. And, I didn't really know what I was getting into jumping in to the movie. I didn't even watch a trailer. It just seemed like a lot of buzz was starting to come up around it. It's a horror film. We're
Hmm.
tackling some horror films, and it's in the theaters. Got that Regal Pass, baby. So I hit the venue. I think, like Bill Skarsgård really carried a lot of this film early on. He had such a good performance and just was really like toying with audience expectations, and much of that is, you know, in the writing and in the directing of the movie itself. So you're always kind of on edge and always a little unnerved by his performance and where that relationship between him and Tess is the name of the main character.
Mm-hmm.
How him and Tess, and his name was Keith. How Keith and Tess kind of played off of one another, and it could easily have been any type of movie at this point. It could have gone anywhere, and I think they had that as a strength early on. It almost seemed like the more you lost the mystery and you started giving some answers in this movie, the less it seemed interesting to me about where it was headed.
Mm-hmm.
However, I thought where they did head, like some of those scares and visuals were pretty good. Not reinventing the wheel, but like quality scares, I think. So I give it up for like the filmmaking. I think was pretty solid.
Yeah. I mean, I like going into movies. I think the trailer was great. I don't think it gave away too much. It kind of let you
Should have watched it.
say it should have like it basically just gave you enough to make you interested to go see it and then to
Sure.
see where it goes. Um, I definitely didn't expect. I mean, are we getting into spoilers here? Because
Yeah, you could go spoiler. Doesn't
all right, at the eight
at
minute
this
mark,
point, if you've
people
gotten to the
stop listening.
yeah, if you don't want spoilers, jump out now. Maddie's about to spoil it from here. We don't do too much of this really because our
Yeah.
conversation is eloquent and insightful, so you know what we're talking about without spoiling it. But
Yes.
at some points we do need to, so go ahead.
Yeah, so I thought the storytelling, besides the choppiness of it, for like some back in time stuff, and then introducing Justin Long's character, I thought it might have been able to been done a little differently. But I didn't mind when they flash after the events that Tess and Keith go through, and then they flash to very bright, sunny LA. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
nice. It's like, all right, we're gonna read.
Right.
All right, so we left you in a dark basement with something down there.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is great. It flashes to Justin Long's character. And I was like, yeah, cool. This is great. So this guy's, because the way the trailer made it seem is Justin Long was already down there. And I was like,
Okay.
that's a cool
Yeah.
take. But I do
Okay.
like that he ended up being the owner of some random properties and he's gotten into some trouble, which, spoiler, he deserves to be all the trouble he's in. But
He's a bad boy.
you know, honestly, I just feel bad for Justin Long in horror movies. He just does not do well in them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was good. The only thing I thought is like when they go back in time to discuss like the killer guy, they kind of show you how he like tracks women and but then it kind of leaves it at that. Like he goes in this
Mm-hmm.
woman's house, pretends to be someone, then leaves, and then you go, "Oh, okay, I get that he kidnaps her later on."
Mm-hmm.
I just to me it just seemed like something they wanted to do, which seemed like a good idea, but when you put it in the film, it didn't work for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought everything else was good. I thought it was filmed very well. I thought that we'll get into acting and performances later, but I thought all that was great. I thought the lighting was great. It was just dark enough that you couldn't really see what was going on.
Yeah.
Anyone shining a fucking camera light from their phone is always terrifying because it's not that good of a light.
Yeah.
You can't get that range that you need with a flashlight. Um, yeah, and I think they did a fairly good job for someone's like first written directed horror movie. I mean, maybe this guy's
Yeah.
directed other
Definitely.
stuff. I thought it was a cool idea. It kind of goes along with. It reminded me a lot of Wreck, but not done as well as Wreck.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, just what happens and what you get to. But I do feel like it was kind of like a horror comedy, um, just because of some of the stuff that the baby stuff in it.
Uh huh.
But
Uh huh.
it
It
did
did.
kind of
Yeah.
it kind of reminded me of Tusk a little bit, not as like Kevin
Yeah.
Smithy, but I do think that it had a little bit of like weird humor, not so much
Yeah.
laugh out loud humor. And
Had
I
some
can
moments of
appreciate
levity.
that someone might have had this idea brewing for a while to like misdirect and like maybe you don't want to stay at Airbnbs because who knows?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my god, I missed living in an Airbnb again.
Yeah. Definitely any number of horrifying circumstances could befall you at an Airbnb. Be careful, folks. Actually, probably
Don't go in the
scariest for the
basement.
people who own those properties. They come
Yeah.
back and they're like, "Oh, geez." I don't know, but yeah, with that, we'll jump into these characters and their performances. I think there were some moments of levity and comedy with these characters, especially like Bill Skarsgård early on when you're kind of trying to figure out whether or not you trust the Keith character.
Yeah.
you know, there's some moments of, you know, guy girl back and forth that are kind of funny, kind of relatable.
Hmm.
And then the stuff with Justin Long, he kind of comes right out the gate with a little bit of funniness, and then, you know, throughout you just see his reactions to things are cause for like laughter, but things tend to just keep getting worse and worse for him. uh it seems
Yes.
like more so than anybody else, really. I'd say, you know, beside the people who actually get killed early on, it seems like Justin Long's character just makes it like worse and worse for himself. Where you have the balance of Georgina Campbell's test, she's kind of trying to figure a way out of it more so than losing her mind like he kind of does. But I liked all three of the main characters in this. I thought they
Hmm.
fit really well. I like how they with Justin Long character, I like how they kind of like get you to dislike him a little bit with that, with the trouble he gets into. He kind of
Hmm.
gets me too'd. He's a TV producer, director, and he's about to have a big pilot go through, but then they halt everything, stop and pull him off the pilot because one of the actresses accuses him of sexual assault, and things go spiraling from there. He decides to go to this property that he has in Detroit, to go see what's going down. And at this point, some stuff has already been going down, and he comes to discover. Well, first, when she comes to discover that, you know, there's this mistake with the Airbnb or whatever, and her and the Keith character have both like rented it out. That's one particular of like shitty situations. And then later when he comes and he sees that there's stuff there and he doesn't know who's been staying there or
Hmm.
whatever, like that was pretty creepy. It was a good way of making each respective character's story like scary in their own right, I guess, in a way. Um, but I liked them. I liked really the villain characters. We'll say the villains,
Hmm.
the antagonists were sufficiently scary. I couldn't help but think of that movie Don't Breathe. Is that what it was?
The one where the guy's blind in the house.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because he had kind of a similar ish motivation
Hmm.
with bringing women down in the basement.
Yes.
So I was like, you know, kind of felt like I've seen this a little bit before. It's a little bit more fucked up, a little bit more monstrous, but yeah, that was like some of the comparisons I was drawing. How about you, like characters, performance?
I mean, I think the best thing that Bill Skarsgård has done, if he's ever going to be in a horror movie, is play Pennywise. Because if you need someone to like make me think that they're a
Look
villain
two different
until
directions.
you tell me they're not, I believe that Bill
Sure.
Skarsgård is the reason behind everything that's happening until I'm proven, until the movie tells me that I was totally wrong.
Right.
I think he's great, and I mean, like once you know that he's not the villain of the story, you're like, oh, he was really good. They would have gotten along really well. That was really great. Like, oh, it's so good. The
Yeah.
relationship. I thought they were great together. Like the back and forth about staying with someone weird you've just met, and then
Mm-hmm.
just like being a guy and just trying to be nice, but also an attractive woman. You know, stuff like that. I thought a lot of that was really cute, and that they had a good time. But it wasn't like she didn't feel pressured, and like when she
Yeah.
shoots him
It was
down,
really
he
natural.
didn't take it as like I'm a macho man. Like I liked his reaction to a lot of things. I feel like it's a very like more uh oh my god, totally blanking on things. It's a more, I guess, more real movie for the time. Like it's not like they went to her room and then they're like, "Oh yeah, this is a movie, so we're just gonna fuck." You know,
Right.
it's just like, there. She was like, nah," and he was like, "Oh." You know, there's some awkwardness because they both kind
Yeah.
of want it to happen, but she doesn't really. And then he goes, "It's totally fine," and then he leaves. And I thought that was really refreshing to see.
Yeah.
Like that they did care about each other and maybe something was going to happen. I thought Tess was great. I think I don't really know her from much, but put her in more shit, man.
Yeah. She was
I thought she was great, and
solid.
just I believed her character all the way through that entire fucking movie. Like when stuff happens to her, I felt for it. I didn't want to see anything bad happen to her.
Mm-hmm.
Justin Long, I think I like him in almost everything he's in most of the time.
Yeah. He's
I
great.
just I think he's just like a great actor. I think he also gets on the screen and you just whoever he's playing, you believe. Like if
Yeah.
he's like a good guy, I believe it. If he's a piece of shit, I can also believe it. And it's kind of crazy he doesn't get more work. But yeah, I thought everyone was great. The other performances in it, the guy, I forget his name, that plays the killer and the father of the
Uh huh.
thing that's in the basement. I love him in things. He's such a piece of shit in Rob Zombie movies. He just, as soon as he gets on screen, you know he's a fucking bad guy, and
Richard Brake.
I love actors like that. And
Yeah,
when he
he
showed
played
up, I
Joe.
didn't.
He was Joe Chill in Batman Begins.
Yeah. Um,
To put the
he
face.
plays a lot of like shitty, like piece of shit characters. He was
Yeah,
in Three from Hell, which that movie's not great, but I love his performance. I love that there are actors out there that like only a few people know, and it's like
yeah,
someone I pick up on. Like, I think he's like, like a Clancy Brown, or
sure,
trying to think of
sure.
something like,
No,
he's
yeah,
always
you're
a
on the right
villain and
track.
stuff, and every once in a while he gets to play kind of a good guy, but he's got a shady past probably, Um, but yeah, I thought all the acting was great. I thought the performances were great. I
Agreed.
thought everyone sold it.
Yeah, I my one thing I really enjoyed the most was like that tunnel,
Oh yeah,
like the
dude.
stages of getting from just the creepy situation of the Airbnb to then like getting to the basement, and there already
Hmm.
being some like weird shit to do with the basement, and then there being a door, and then the tunnel, and then
Yeah,
another door and a camera and like this fucking weird room. And I was
yeah.
just like, this is really working very well for this movie, and I almost just hoped that the more mystery would happen like the further you'd go into this maze. Like it could have gotten
Hmm.
really weird, like a
Yeah.
doorway to hell or something like that. I would have been so in. It became a little bit more, I will say, believable, or yeah, like believable-ish, and not as far-fetched as it probably could have gone with just like
Hmm.
following down that tunnel. Um, so just the set pieces and everything, the house. I don't know how they built that set exactly, but it was really cool. It was really creepy and played on my
Hmm.
imagination. Because there's a number of different rooms and like colored lighting coming from these rooms and different situations happening for each room, or like that cage that they were locked in for a second was
Yeah.
so gross. And the whole bottle scene scenario where she's like, drink it, and he's like not wanting to drink out of the bottle, and she does, and it's just like, what the frig is in that bottle?
Yeah.
Don't drink it. But like, like that, moments like that in movies like this, I'm like, well, what would I do? Like, I
I
think I'd
drink that
probably
fucking
end up
bottle, man.
drinking the bottle. Yeah. And so she had to appease to the what you find is the like killer of this film, which I think I don't want to spoil that necessarily, but it's a pretty twisted reveal, I'd say, and a pretty interesting kind of like movie mechanic in terms of the way that you have to like deal with this killer. So Tess realizes you have to appease to the killer to not get killed and kind of
Hmm.
become its pet, or their pet. But the people who get down there in this tunnel and panic and freak out, they're like going to become fodder. They're going to become kills, which is a cool dynamic because
Hmm.
you have this whole notion of restraint and staying calm and like mastering your fear in order to survive, kind of thing. So you see these very different dynamics with these three characters and a few other characters who get wrapped up with this crazy killer,
Hmm.
that you find down in the tunnels below the house. Like the more you
Yeah.
describe it, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Um, so like the monster makeup, or we'll call it monster makeup. I'm throwing you little red herrings here, folks. But the prosthetics and makeup and stuff on the killer were great. I
Yeah.
thought looked really cool. Was a statuesque actor, so you got some really cool, nasty, grimy shots from that phone light,
Hmm.
shining on it. And it's like almost at evoked moments like kind of what you're saying with Wreck, of like being like a found footage kind of scenarios, although
Hmm.
we're like there, it's set, it's like we're in a movie, it's not just a found footage thing.
Yeah.
But it evoked to a lot of these kind of modern tropes and visuals that just are really like richly pretty scary. Like the visuals were pretty fucking scary.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I thought like, I mean, it shot well. I think the creature is, it's very like the end of Wreck, or if you saw Quarantine and don't watch foreign films, which I highly recommend, go back and watch the
Wreck,
Spanish
baby.
version. But it was very reminiscent of that, and those kind of hallway, those like far off shots.
Yeah.
I do like that the first, like you were saying, with like the camera angle, and like it did kind of feel like a first person to kind of get you, and it was very claustrophobic down there too.
Mm-hmm.
And That stuff's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean all that, the whole basement, just like the whole setup for the house and going down there and the journey down to the pits of hell was great. It looked real. I believe that that was part of an underground system. I don't know
Yeah.
how realistic that is, but
Yeah. It
um,
probably does still keep going.
and yeah, I mean that's the thing. I thought there, you know, I wonder if this film had more creatures, or there was an
Mm.
idea of like a family of them or something, and they
Something.
had to
Yeah.
kind of like, well, our budget's
Pare
only
it down.
this, and we need to get actors, and we can't spend
Sequel
all our money.
opportunity.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought all the gags and stuff were good. The kills were good. I mean, the first one with Bill Skarsgård getting his head pummeled, like they
That
focused
was
on it for
good.
a long time. Like it was a good,
Loved
like,
it.
you saw his head
Good
disintegrate.
sound.
Um, one of the characters kills himself. I thought was great. The baby bottle thing was just disgusting enough that I didn't want to drink it, but I would. Because if someone was down there and was like, just fucking do it, you just got to be your little baby, I'd have been like, I'll be a little baby.
Yeah.
uh, I would cry. It probably tastes
Shit my
disgusting.
pants for sure.
That milk was probably warm as fuck. And where did it come from? I don't know. I don't want to know. Maybe I do.
Yeah.
Um,
Ooh.
I do think like there was another kill that was great in a tower with a homeless man that's kind of come in to kind of save him for the
Oh
third
yeah.
act, and that was a pretty good, pretty great one, pretty visceral. And then Justin Long, I'm sorry, you just can't make it through these goddamn horror movies,
Yeah.
but his death was pretty gruesome. Yeah, I thought it was cool. I mean, I don't know the way it ends, how much sequel potential there is, but I think
Yeah.
as a standalone, it was cool. It kind of invoked a lot of like X Files kind of vibe for me. Like I
Yeah.
could totally see Mulder and Scully going in. Kind of reminded me of the Home episode a little bit, which I one of my favorite
Yeah.
eps.
Tie this
So,
in. It's like they
yeah,
come to the aftermath. And
yeah,
there's more family down there or
yeah,
something.
dude.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like little movies like this. I don't really think I need a Barbarian too. I love,
Sure.
the thing that I really loved was the poster with the door opening, the red, and it just saying Barbarian. Like, what are we
Yeah.
getting into? Why would you call your movie this? Like, you know, they could have easily called this Airbnb, and it wouldn't have
Yeah.
worked. But I think, the trailer with the name of the movie is just, there's something that's like reminiscent of like old horror flicks. You would see like these weird names on them and stuff. Some of them
Yeah.
were kind of cheesy, but it kind of like the name Barbarian kind of invokes like Sorcerer, that movie that was a remake of like Wages of Fear, where you're just
Okay.
like, oh, the name is like intriguing,
Yeah. Wait,
and
is Sorcerer, is that the one where they're transporting the dynamite across the bridge?
yeah, it's a remake of
Wow.
like a German film called Wages of
That's a good
Fear.
movie. Nice
Dude,
deep
so
cut.
good. But why would
That's a
you call it
great movie.
Sorcerer? I don't know. I mean,
Right,
maybe
yeah.
I maybe need
Its
to see the
posters
movie
all.
again. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's kind of like, I like seeing posters like this with like titles like this, because
Yeah. It's
Barbarian to me is
evocative.
there's like a lot of barbaric shit that's going on in this movie.
Right. Yeah.
And that's awesome. I love that they picked that name and the studio let it happen instead of calling it, like there's that movie Smile coming out. It's a
Mm-hmm.
horror movie,
Okay.
and it's about, I don't fucking know. It looks terrible, but like that's not
Smile.
a good
Yeah.
name for that movie. I don't want to watch a
Yeah.
horror movie called Smile. I do want to watch a horror movie or a thriller called Barbarian though, because
Yeah.
that's cool.
I
And I
agree.
think that led a lot to it. I think the trailer was great. With my little qualms with it, I thought, it was good.
It's a strong start, I think, on par with like House of the Devil, Ty West's House of the Devil,
Oh,
because it kind
so
of
good.
keeps things simple, and it's as fucked up as it needs to be to kind of
Hmm.
like rope you into their brand or their notion. Like it is really solidly directed. Like it almost feels like somebody who's been doing it for a while. Like this is their
Yeah,
third feature or something. We're kind of like weighing the pros and cons of that, but it's their
yeah,
first feature and it's very strong. For me, I think there was just maybe I didn't want it to end. Maybe I just wanted more messed up stuff and like go further down the rabbit hole. But it kind of
yeah.
wraps itself up and maybe a little rushed, I think, into the ending. And some of the concepts are a little like take it or leave it. But
Hmm.
but I'm gonna take it. I thought it was pretty strong, pretty good. Maybe slightly underwhelmed maybe there in the end, but I think it's rightfully earned its place at the top of the box office right now,
Hmm.
especially kicking off the Spooky Ween season.
Yeah.
There's some solid horror flicks coming out streaming and in theaters, so
Hmm.
I think we got our work cut out for us.
We're
But yeah,
ready.
I thought it was pretty I'll say solid. You know, I say solid. It
Yeah.
didn't like reinvent the wheel or anything, but it executed what it needed to in a very efficient and pretty skillful way. I'd say. Good job, Zach Krieger.
Yeah. Uh, this is a movie that if I saw this in my video store on VHS with the red cover and the door and Tess looking through with the flashlight and said Barbarian, I would totally pick up.
Yeah,
And that's kind of the way. And I don't feel like they make these movies anymore.
yeah,
Not like that you get to see in the theater. To me, I'm kind of surprised this actually was a theater release. Like, not seeing a Predator film on Hulu is great. I didn't have to go to the theater. I could sit with my friends. I mean, I watched it that night, but you have your buddies over.
mm-hmm.
But I'm glad Barbarian went to the theater. I think it
Me
is,
too.
I think this a lot of the sound was great. It kind of gets you in the mood for a spooky movie, like you said. This is kicking off, spooky ween. So I think it's a great movie to do that. Um, and with its faults, I think like with any classic movie that we find like we keep ourselves coming back to and rewatching again to try to discover new stuff. I think this is one of those movies that I will probably watch a couple more times or something that I revisit.
Yeah.
Kind of like Tusk. Like it's not my favorite Kevin Smith movie, but I find myself always wanting to watch it every couple of
Yeah.
years just to
All right.
revisit it because it is pretty fucked up. There's a
It's
lot of
just so
stuff going
weird.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Barbarian is going to be in there. I think it's, years from now probably will be among a cult classic. But I will say that if you're a horror movie fan and watch a lot of this movie, you've seen it. It's basically it's not as good as Wreck. It's an episode of the X Files. You've seen this concept before.
Sure.
It's nothing new, but I do think it is a fresh take, and that's always something cool to see. That we're kind of throwing back to these old school kind of horror movies with these like cool
Mm-hmm.
posters and stuff like that. But they have something new to say, but using these kind of older stuff that you've seen from like classic 80s films or 90s television.
Yeah.
And I think that's cool. It's got to like I feel like a lot of people our age are coming up now and they're throwing back to a lot of stuff they grew up with,
Mm-hmm.
and that's awesome because I don't
Yeah.
really see anyone else
80s,
doing it
90s.
except people our age doing it.
Yeah.
It's like am I going to line up to see what Martin Scorsese does next? Yeah, of course. He's a great director, but I love these new guys coming on the scene, kind of throwing
Yeah.
back to stuff they grew up with
Getting
and stuff that they
nostalgic.
love. Yeah, and it's nice to see that someone else loves the same shit I do.
Right. Oops.
So I would say closing remarks. If the poster grabbed you, if the trailer grabbed you, go see the movie. It's a great
Yeah.
time. Grab some popcorn, a soda, take your best friend or your best gal. And I jumped a little. And it's hard to do sometimes, but I jumped.
Yeah. And I hope Justin Long kind of leans into this like horror icon
Mm-hmm.
status kind of thing, because I mean he's got his real break with Jeepers Creepers, if I'm not
Yeah.
correct, before he did some of the comedy stuff he's known for. So
Mm-hmm.
he's kind of got the street cred, and now he's jumping in there like a young Jeffrey Combs or something. And
I'd
and
watch him in a Reanimator remake as Herbert West. That would be sick.
or straddling this line between
Mm-hmm.
comedy and horror, as well as maybe embracing some of these more pathetic and more miserable kind of characters, I think would
Yeah.
be really fun to see him do like a string of things like this.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, like completely agree. Thought it was good. Thank you everybody that was Barbarian for tonight for this episode. We're back in full effect after our vacations. If you want to engage with us on
Yes.
Instagram, that's right there. That's the name. We'll have like a Patreon and like all that stuff coming up soon for those that want to help support. We're just kind of getting the snowball built at this moment before we push it down the hill. But thanks again to all those who watched our Orphan First Kill episode.
Yeah, thank
that was
you.
pretty tight. We got some pretty good solid views there right off the bat. Hopefully you're all enjoying this horror spooky ween episodes that we're getting into, because Matty and I sure do love watching horror films and talking about them. But I guess that's Barbarian.
Saint!
Oh, almost missed it there. It's kind of hard. We're getting used to
Yeah, I can't.
the
I'm
windows.
terrible at it, but
Yeah, so join us next time. It'll most likely be Pearl, the prequel to X. If you haven't seen X, definitely check it out. It's a solid
yeah.
one. Check that episode as well. We'll talk a little bit about both. But until then, we'll be seeing you. Peace out.
Laters!